I'm going to have you guys go through the row and tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're here this week. I'll start with you.
Well, my name is Allison Tiemann, and I've been involved in men's rights for about 10, 12 years, just mostly online forums and talking about. My main focus was actually male victims of sexual abuse and rape. So I've been researching.
What's up, YouTube? Today, we're covering multiple men's rights advocates and their red pill moments and how passport bros relate to them. So, let's get into it.
That as well. And so participating in forums. Before that, I actually read quite a bit of information on men's issues. I read the entire one bookshelf in my university library, cover to cover, on men's issues. That was probably, I guess, would be 14 years ago now. So 14, 16, something like that. Yeah. And actually, the interesting thing was the person who got me into it was my mother when she gave me The Princess at the Window, a book on men's issues and I guess counter feminism. And she gave it to me because I just come back from an all girls school and she felt that I was becoming too too radically feminist, which is interesting now that and I started to read and research the issues and started to understand the vulnerabilities that men face and the issues that men face and the problems that they had. And through doing that, I lost a lot of my anger, my initial anger that I was expressing, which was what my mother was concerned about. She actually organized the first Take Back the Night march in our hometown. She was originally an editor at a women's magazine or a feminist paper, but she got frozen out, in part because she wanted to maintain a standard of grammar and proper English, and they felt that that was patriarchal. And she at one of the marches, and this is when she was starting to sour towards feminism. My father actually volunteered to bartend, and he encountered lesbian separatists or radical separatists. Like, I'm not saying that lesbians are like this is, but there are some who are radical separatists who, when he created drinks for them, wouldn't touch them. And the only other time I've ever encountered that kind of thing was in Saudi Arabia, because I lived in Saudi Arabia for 10 years. Sometimes if you would give shopkeepers, male shopkeepers, money, they wouldn't touch it. They wouldn't want to touch you because you might be menstruating, and they had really strong taboos against touching women when they were menstruating. So it was interesting to think that that kind of attitude was here, but with these radical separatist feminists.
You know, madam, in my red pill moment video, which I'll be adding a link to in the description, I had a very similar experience, only it was with the church. And I was told that, hey, just touching a woman on the shoulder, tap, 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 that was insanely nebulous, or was an inappropriate gesture. Even though last time I checked, just tapping someone on the shoulder has always been a casual way to get someone's attention. When did that change? Also, what do you expect the men to do? Just walk into church with their hands tied behind their backs? Alright?
My father. And that's sort of when my mother started to question why she was involved in the movement, and which I guess eventually led her to some of the counter feminist writing, like Christina Hoff Sommers and other, I guess, antithetical or feminists who are they question aspects of the movement. And then she eventually gave it to me when she felt that I was getting to be more or polarized against men, I guess would be. And because it became like, to be honest, it became an easy way to just deflect my lack of uh, like care or self-esteem towards myself onto hating men, and that's not a very healthy thing, right? You don't. It becomes a hate sink when we really should be addressing the fact that you don't love yourself and you have these really negative feelings towards yourself, and also a lack of gratitude towards what you do have, and so she was trying to steer me away from that, and so that's sort of where I came from.
All right, thank you.
I don't know how to follow.
Olivia?
My name's Jessica. I sometimes go by Jessica. It's Jessica Kenny. I've been addressing men's rights, non-feminism, for a little over a year now. I'd never really thought of myself as a feminist. I was very girl power for a while. I'm a girl, I can do that. And then I just felt like, it was probably a stereotype of feminism. I thought, they're just whining about being equal. Why don't they just go out and do things and show that they're equal? Why do you need to, all these complaints and protests and theories, and just go show that you're equal? And I lose what pinpointed it, but I know that there was a moment where I started kind of looking around online to try and kind of just figure out where my brain was at the time and like how I felt. And I kind of started looking into some non-feminist things, and found some people on YouTube. The first was Christy O'Misty, had some kind of non-feminist things, and the more I watched, I started to kind of identify with the things that she was talking about. And her videos led to Girl Rights What, Karen Strong. And of course I was working overnights at the time, so I watched every single one of her videos. And then just kind of started looking into talking to some more people, started networking, met up with a lot of people on Facebook.
Madam, what you are describing is what I would call the pre-red pill moment. For those of you guys who don't know, a red pill moment is not something that accumulates overnight. Like, you don't go through that big of a mental change overnight. Well, not usually. There are stages in it. What she's describing is a stage where you start actively questioning a lot of the things that the feminist movement has been teaching you. And you start seeking out answers for those questions. And once you get those answers, shortly after, majority of the time, that's when your red pill moment happened. When the truth basically just sets you free. It really does.
Started interacting and debating and just kind of discussing the issues and learning more, and kind of just trying to bring balance to the discourse, because everything always seemed to be so, women face this and this happens to women and this and this and this, and I'm thinking it's just not balanced. That's not all that's happening. It didn't seem quite right. I joined a couple Facebook pages. A friend of mine, Denise, started one as a counter to, there's the I Need Feminism Because project that went around, and people hold up little whiteboards and their reason for needing feminism. So she wanted to do an opposite to that. So we started the I Don't Need Feminism Because, and had a bunch of people holding up signs, their reasons for being non-feminist. And that page has kind of grown, and that's been my main focus before I joined the Honey Badgers. So doing that, and that's going to, I think we just got over 5,000 fans, so that's kind of cool. And then joining up with the Honey Badgers and focusing on issues that men are facing. And my biggest catalyst, though, was my son. I always felt like there was, like I said, just not balance. I always heard about how women are facing this and women are facing that, and I saw so many women that were treating men badly. And I'm thinking, well, why doesn't that get talked about? Why isn't that in the conversation? And then a little over 2 years ago, I had a son, and I just started thinking about, what kind of future is out there for him? What kind of opportunities does he have, and what kind of risks are there for him? And so that really kind of pushed me into looking more into not just non-feminism, feminism, but also men's rights. So he's my guy. Oh gosh. I'm Rachel Edwards, bit of a blogger. I got involved with men's rights. It's kind of a involved process. I often try and find a specific point, but I really find that oftentimes all of it was just sort of moving towards the same direction. And really what happened was, I think a lot of it has to do with my history of depression, and that I was very suicidal at 15, and I really bounced back from that. And I started meeting guys online and talking to them and trying to, say it's not that bad. I mean, it can get better. It's really, really hard now, but there's always something just, out of reach that you can't see. And there's a future for yourself. But they were often so inconsolable. And I wondered what was really going on with them. I really did feel this sense of empathy for their situation. Many of them really had serious problems, and nobody cared. Nobody at all. They didn't have anybody they could really reach out to. And I wondered, I tried to be that person, but I was only one person, and it really felt, I guess, isolating. And what was even worse is that sometimes I felt that it conflicted with my beliefs at the time, because I considered myself a feminist, and they said, well, women are the primary victims. They're the ones who suffer the most. But I knew, even from going through groups and therapy, that wasn't the case, that men were victims of sexual assault and things like that. I didn't know to what extent, though. So I just, over the years, I started coming across things, and I guess I started noticing that I really didn't have anything in common with modern day feminism at all, because they were completely different from what the values that I had for myself, which was being self-reliant and, really trying to be equal. And my idea of equality is, not using a man for the things that he can give you, engaging with him as a person, as your equal. And I wondered why nobody else was signing up for these things, why no one else was getting on board. And then I remember talking with these women, and I suggested these things. I said, this isn't just a victim party for women. Men really do suffer too, and nobody's really addressing that. And I got such a backlash. I eventually found my way to videos of Karen Strawn, and then I started watching more videos, and then I started watching Honey Badger Radio, and eventually I signed on what I thought was just going to be some stuff on the side, and then I just got really involved. And I think it really comes from a desire to help men, and really to improve the way that we engage between the sexes, the way we talk to each other, the way we relationships. They're very important, and I really feel that they're deteriorating, and it should never happen in the first place. But that's sort of a short summary. Crystal?
Well, I was a feminist for most of my life, up until a little less than a year ago, when I created a page, Loving and Celebrating Men, after just finally getting frustrated of seeing a lot of online attacks on men's bodies, like making fun of their bodies, and I just got really sick of it. And I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna create a space where I can support men. So I started to, look up stuff about loving and celebrating men, like just try and Google things online, and nothing came up directly towards doing that for men. Every article was how men can do that for women. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And through more research, I came across AVFM. And I actually, prior to that, had met up with NCFM, which is National Coalition for Men in Vegas, and had gotten some information. So I started to just read more, and I also watched Karen Strawn. And I started to listen to Honey Badger Radio. And I just really got, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. And I was ready to step away from feminism. I had actually thought about it in my 20s, and I was like, you know what, this is just so much man-hating here. I can't do it anymore. And another feminist was like, no, but we're not all like that. And I was like, oh, okay. So I kind of adopted the, no, I'm not like that, mantra, but it just wasn't holding anymore. And so I let go of feminism, and I started to research the Human Rights Campaign. But even there, as far as domestic violence, there was no section for men. So I was like, okay, well, that's that's not valid. So I started to look into more of the men's human rights movement. I was like, yeah, this is right. This is where men are going to finally get the support they need. And I also received a lot of backlash, which I was really shocked. These were some women that I've known for years, who, when I said, I was like, yeah, I'm a men's human rights activist now, and they just lost it. One of them was like, well, we're not equally represented in Congress. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Because if you're talking about our bodies, how do you know that men, there's lots of men who are standing up for women's rights. You're dismissing them by saying we're not equally represented in Congress because we don't have, a certain amount of genitalia there that matches ours. And I'm like, that's not how you measure people. And I'm like, and how do you know the women that you're going to just pull in just because they're women are going to vote for stuff that supports you? How do you know that? Because we both have the same, anatomy. I was like, that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, actually, that's pretty sexist. And she's like, oh, well, you're a misogynist. And that was my first time being called a misogynist. And I was like, what? Facts make me a misogynist? How did that happen? But that was the first time I felt, I was like, God, I felt my throat, like my voice constrict in my throat. And I'm like, God, is this what guys feel like all the time when they're trying to say, hey, these are actually the facts? So, yeah, I just got really motivated in supporting men's human rights. I mean, to me, it's men are human. I don't know how the conversation turned in.
To these two ladies, yep, same experience when I became a passport bro. Really, was. Like, for example, during COVID, there were these two friends of mine who are now a professional missionary couple. They literally get paid to do missionary work overseas where they teach the Bible overseas. They became a couple and eventually got married because I gave them both a place of sanctuary to stay during the COVID pandemic. I did. They literally got to spend the COVID pandemic at a resort-based gated community. Yeah. And when I showed them my Red Pill Moment video and told them I'm decided to become a passport bro, I got such an enormously huge backlash as well. Like, the best way I could describe it was they had an overnight personality swap. Like they just did. Like the stuff that they would be very dedicated to the Bible before, the verses in the Bible, they went back on without hesitation. And I was kind of horrified about that. And also worried for them too. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but last time I checked, in order to get a paid position at a church, it doesn't really matter what religion it is. In order to get a paid position, not a volunteer position, you have to be all in that religion. Like, it's either you are in or you're out. There's no in between. There's no wiggle room in that. So when I saw that, I watched in horror, and I was actually very much scared for them. Like I was. Whew. Let's get back into it.
Pushing men out of the human rights conversation. And there's a lot of misconceptions being spread about men's human rights activists. Men's human rights activists, that we don't care about women's rights. That's not the case at all. No one's dismissing women as human beings. We're also adding that men are also human beings, So, I have the Loving and Celebrating Men page, and then I got to join the Honey Badgers, and that's been really awesome. And I also created a page to Return to Femininity, because I do believe that in order that we can create a healthy type of sisterhood with women as well, that we can all feel safe with each other and feel good together, because feminism doesn't promote that at all. I don't see how it supports women when it says you need to live in fear. You need to do what feminism says, otherwise you're not a proper woman and you're a misogynist, So it goes, it's a full circle. It's every human, and as for egalitarianism, if we're supposed to be moving towards that, then we have to actually listen to the voice of men, to the suffering of men. Because to look throughout history and say that only women have suffered makes no sense. It's not true. It's not a reality. We all suffered as humans. And actually, when I watched Warren Farrell's interview, he says, he points out how we lived in survival systems. You know, we all lived in survival systems that were horrible for everybody. You know, and how can we move forward from that together? And that's the point. You know, yeah, it's really it's heartbreaking to see when men step up and say this is what we need, for them to be met with, we don't care, shut up. You know, and that's it's not right, and you just don't treat people that way. So I'm
Not only do I agree that it's not right, madam, but there's also is a great deal amount of long-term damage that is caused by doing that. For you see, one of those long-term damages that I'm describing is that there comes a time in a lot of families' lives where you are now creating your own family, you have kids now, and you want your kids to have access, immediate access to a funny uncle. But apparently, this guy who lives out of state, who is most likely planning on moving to another country, becoming a passport bro, he's kind of it. He is. But that's just not, well, he'll still be a funny uncle, but the kids won't have immediate access to him. And the reason why is because the majority of the issues he dealt with women because of the feminist movement, the majority of that stuff took place in his home state, like it did. It never got appropriately addressed, like it just never did, and that's when, and because of that, for a lot of passport bros, myself included, the idea of spending Christmas alone sounds, for a lot of times, would start to sound like heaven in comparison to spending it with people who are not going to listen to you. And correct me if I'm wrong, but last time I checked, for a lot of passport bros, that pain is the motivator that convinces them to finally just bite the bullet, take a leap of faith, and get away from overseas, or eventually move overseas with remote American income and just leave. Yeah, that's literally what happens a lot of times.
be here because you know, it's exciting to see the conference begin this conversation. Well, not begin, but propel this conversation. You know, so
Yeah. I was going to say something. I'm sorry for.
yeah, it's like,
I think part of the problem with feminism is that if you do not acknowledge the dark feminine, you really can't create a healthy sisterhood.
right,
No.
right,
Because you just perpetuate the same behaviors over and over again.
exactly.
You have to be able to shine light on it, you know,
Yeah.
and sterilize the kind of things that women do to each other.
Yeah.
The kind of backstabbing, the kind of subterfuge,
And they
and
never talk
Right.
about it. They don't acknowledge it. You
Yeah.
know, just how cutting and hateful they can be
yeah,
Right.
to each
Mhm.
other. Just to each other, not even just to men.
yeah,
Right.
To each other, and they don't ever really acknowledge that happens. Even among I guess people who would be close in a feminist group,
yeah,
and they
Right.
just it's
Not to mention
ridiculous.
people that don't agree with him. I think most women that speak out for men and boys have their own little collection of ugly things that they've been called by other women.
yeah.
Misogynist, Stockholm syndrome,
Yeah.
brainwashed,
Stepford wife,
baby
special
maker.
snowflake.
Yeah.
Misogynistic
Snowflake,
cult
sex
leader.
slave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You,
In it
yeah,
for
you
the
said- you said
in it for the
one,
money, in
the
it for the
myth.
fame.
Oh,
like,
misogynist
Yeah,
cupcake.
misogynist
like
cupcake.
we get money, and well, I guess
Oh, and
we
our-
are getting some fame
Yeah.
here,
Our-
but
our
we don't
harem
really
of
get
men.
money.
Apparently,
No,
we
we
gain a
don't.
harem of men because we're men's
Yeah,
rights activists.
yeah.
Yeah, he's right over
I was
there.
gonna say I think my husband.
You also get called pick me, get accused of being a Trump supporter. I mean, I became a passport bro, that was the first time I got accused of that. And let's see, oh, you're doing this only because there's a man in your life who's being possessive and controlling, etc., etc.
I've been told I'm doing this to get male attention, and I'm like, oh my gosh, oh no, no.
I have all the male attention I need at home from my husband and my son.
I have a good boyfriend. I mean, most of us are actually in a a committed relationship. We're not really in this to get like a harem of men or for money. We don't really get paid to do this.
Well, I mean, it's not bad to get paid to do advocacy for men and boys, because ultimately it's not going to go anywhere until people are paid for it, right? They can't go up against the kind of structures that feminists have put in place if they don't have the resources, and if they don't get paid, then they won't have the resources. But so that's not the problem, but it's like the reality is that this is not flattering to men to talk about men's vulnerabilities.
No.
To talk about the ways that they are not strong, and that they are, well, weak. And to be honest about it, it's not flattering. And it doesn't really, espousing these ideas doesn't really create male attention. I mean, there are guys in the men's rights movement who say, yeah, you're right. But it's not flattering. It's not a flattering lie. And I know it seems like there's a lot of guys who really like the flattering lie of feminism. It's a very flattering, you're omnipotent because you're a man. You have nothing to worry about. You're incredibly strong. You're so powerful and connected. I mean, every single bit of that is flattery. And it's empty, and it's hiding the truth. And the honest truth is that men do have a lot of vulnerabilities that need to be addressed by society.
Yeah.
And so we're not flattering. So I actually think that probably we get more male attention by being feminists and saying this and promoting this sort of male power fantasy of patriarchy theory. And look at Anita Sarkeesian. She's got tons and tons of attention and money. All of the feminists really get tons and tons of attention and money, and it's because they're playing to the existing traditional narrative of a damsel in distress who needs to be saved by the white knight charging in. And the white knight charging in is all of the feminist men who get to think of themselves as being these powerful warriors for truth and justice, saving the delicate, fragile glass. If you drop her, she'll shatter into a million pieces, little damsel. And that's really the whole feminist mythology, right in a nutshell. And I know that a lot of feminists will come back and say, no, that's not what we're saying. That's not what we're saying. But then I challenge them. I'll wait for the. Yeah, hold on. But what was I saying? I was saying.
Well, I was going to say that I find it amazing how
narrative
feminists. Obviously, their prime thing is opposing misogyny, and I mean that's a completely valid thing to do. But I found so much misogyny in feminism. I mean, like that idea right there, where they start off saying women are powerful, women are strong, they can do this, they can do anything that a man can do. Great, and yet they're doing so much to protect women. Like they're these, like you were saying, delicate little flowers that they go into the workplace and God forbid somebody says the wrong word and their whole day is just shot.
Life.
And they've fallen into a deep depression, and that's not an empowering image of women at all, and it's completely contradictory.
Yeah, well, I remember reading from the Good Men Project, which is essentially a feminist publication. The writer, I cannot for the life of me remember his name, I apologize, but he wrote, he was the one who wrote about teaching boys that they're rapists or not to rape as feminists, like that whole thing.
The male feminist article?
No, well,
all boys are rapists?
That they needed to be taught not to rape, that she needed to teach boys not to rape.
Okay.
And she was saying, like, is there a word for saying don't rape anyone, asshole? And he's talking like his boy, his son.
That's awful.
And
Hateful.
of course he just said, well, we can't say that, so we just say soften boys. But then he goes into the spiel where he says, well, no matter how strong a woman you make your daughters, she's still a fragile vessel who could shatter into a million unfixable pieces at the brutish actions of any man. And it's like,
It's ridiculous.
yeah, my father would never taught me that.
No.
You know, it's like strap it back on and keep going. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, and I can't imagine how that is empowering to think that things can shatter you, because it really, strength is about dealing with life as it is, not expecting other.
Well, madam, I can now tell you that is not empowering in the slightest. In fact, I think teaching women to go about that kind of lifestyle is honestly worse than being raped itself. Like it is. Because if you go to a hospital, you'll learn that medically speaking, depending on how severe your case is, woman can in fact recover from being raped. Like her life is salvageable. Like it really is. But what you described, madam, of what that teach women to go into that kind of lifestyle, to be just afraid of men all the time, the damage to the woman's life there is permanent. Like it really is. For example, I knew some women who, even though they graduated from high school, I mean from college, they got degrees and everything, they never moved out of their parents' house. They just never did. It eventually got so ridiculous and so out of hand that their mothers were scrambling to try to find husbands for them just to get them out of the house. Some of them even went to me. And well, I got news for you. That idea failed. And the reason why is because, for reasons like you just described, madam, their daughters don't have anything of long-term value to bring into a man's life. So we don't really have any reason to take them up on that. We really don't. And also, and you also pretty much just described why a lot of men who become pastor bros find women from the province areas of other countries very attractive. Because think about it. A man, he grows up dealing with this and this, and well, he basically has to build a hard work ethic to make up for all these women who are whining and complaining because of the feminist movement. Got news for you. When we see a woman who is in the province area, who's not afraid of good old fashioned hard work, that just screams attractiveness to us. It really does. But when we see women like you're describing who are just scared of everything, I can tell you from my experience, I don't really feel turned on by that. In fact, I feel kind of disgusted. To be honest with you, my reaction when I see women who complain about all these little things like, oh, I feel uncomfortable, stuff like that, is that I'm very tempted to send a letter to their mother and let them know you failed. Yeah.
For you. You know, and it even feels uncomfortable when guys do that, when they pad the world for you. And it almost creates a cage of that padding. You know, you can't exit it because you're so sensitive now that the moment you exit it, you're in trouble. You're unable to cope. So now you're stuck in these little harems.
You're stuck. Yeah, you really are stuck. You're trapped in this because, you know, they say that they really are trying to empower women, but they're not. They're making it worse. It is like she said. They are padding everything. They're making women feel more comfortable being easily offended.
being, just shattered by the littlest thing. Yeah, being afraid. Yes, very. I mean, they're afraid everywhere they go that someone out there is just waiting in the bushes to rape them or something. And that's just not true. The statistics don't back that. It's.
I've encountered too many people lately that are making these broad statements of all women. All women are afraid.
Alright, everybody, that's all we got time for today. I think we'll hit the pool now. Now we got some heat in Florida. We're experiencing a bit of a cold front right now, so during these cold fronts, I kind of like the heat when I get to have it.